0559019 The show is streaming live on our social media pages. On Facebook, we are streaming live at Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority. Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority. Still on Facebook, we are streaming live at Port of Tema. And on YouTube, we are live at Eye on Port. Eye on Port. Indeed, when the time is ripe, we shall activate the phone lines for you to call in and contribute to the discussion. My name is Kennedy Mona. We are going for a quick break. On bounce back, we'll continue with the show. Please stay with us.
Every now and again, Goil makes good things happen. This time, Goil has introduced Super XP Ron 95, a higher grade fuel loaded with additives and yet sold at the same price as normal fuel. Goil Super XP Ron 95 enhances engine performance like never before. It maintains the engine by keeping it clean from carbon deposits. Goil Super XP Ron 95 is designed to burn slowly and thus improves fuel economy, making you save money after several kilometers. Goil Super XP Ron 95 gives you a smooth driving experience, that is, less vibrations. Fill up with Goil Super XP Ron 95. Now there's no need to pay more for any higher grade fuel. Goil has that sorted. Goil, good energy.
Taxes, our future.
Because you see, without our taxes, we wouldn't have good roads, good schools, better hospitals, street lights, and other very important social amenities. When we pay our taxes, we give our children free and quality education. Talga, my money too small. Why should I pay my tax? Look, small. Salifo, it doesn't matter how small or big your business or income is. You still have to pay your taxes. The little taxes from each and every one of us, when put together, could give your community clean water or that deprived school with tables and chairs. Please pay your taxes. It is your responsibility. It is your civic duty. It is the law.
Impressive factory. If only I had listened to you, I wouldn't have been in this mess. That devastating fire virtually wiped out the whole factory and my warehouse.
Remember my misfortunes last year? Serene Insurance Asset All Risk Fire Policy that I took were there to pay for my damaged stocks in the warehouse. And my machines that were affected by the floods have been replaced. My accident vehicle is back on the road thanks to Serene Insurance Motor Policy. Currently, my goods are on the high seas, covered with their marine cargo insurance policy. I was just telling Ajima about Serene Insurance.
Oh, Ajima,
tell him more.
As a road contractor, I make sure I do my contractors all risk insurance for the projects and then workers' compensation for all the workers on site. With Serene Insurance, they will make sure they will cover your unknown tomorrow today.
Serene Insurance, the new face of insurance. Call us now.
MPS Terminal 3 is Africa's new state-of-the-art container terminal at Tema Port. For manufacturers, agro-processors and traders, the new port means business can be done faster. This infrastructure boost will improve Ghana's port handling capacity, connect more trading routes, and oil the engine of growth for the economy, creating greater opportunities across all sectors as Africa's markets merge and become the largest trading bloc globally. MPS, we connect, you thrive.
All right, so you're welcome back. It's now time for us to take a look at happenings in the port and shipping industry in the course of the week. In the course of the week, the Ghana Maritime Authority, together with stakeholders, held a two-day workshop on global best practices in vessel clearance. Let's take a look at this story.
Public and private sector stakeholders within the maritime and shipping industry of West and Central Africa during the week assembled in Accra, Ghana to deliberate on best practices in vessel clearance at seaports. The two-day Global Best Practices in Vessel Clearance workshop, organized by the Maritime Anti-Corruption Network in collaboration with the Convention on Business Integrity and hosted by the Ghana Maritime Authority, had participation from Ghana, Nigeria, Cote d'Ivoire, Togo, Senegal, and Cameroon. Associate Director at the Maritime Anti-Corruption Network, Vivek Menon, indicated that the efforts of the network, whose membership constitutes over 180 private sector companies, is towards promoting inter-industry private-public sector dialogue that will tackle corruption risk in the maritime sector.
More importantly, I think our goal is to make business operating environments as less costly and as less cumbersome as possible. Because in the end of the day, if you look at the broader blue economy discussion or ocean governance discussion, we strongly believe that integrity or operations through ethical practices is fundamental.
According to the Deputy Director General of the Ghana Maritime Authority, Yao Akosa Entry, the complex nature of the shipping trade makes it susceptible to corrupt activities, thus echoed the need for stronger collaboration towards ending the menace.
Corruption has become one of the industry's main challenges. Social extortion by officials, even small amounts, is very detrimental as minor delays to a vessel's timing comes with a very high cost of operating. Corruption in the maritime industry not only generates additional operational costs for the maritime industry, but endangers the safety and well-being of the crew, that is seafarers, and also acts as a significant barrier to trade and development.
Danish Ambassador to Ghana, Tom Norin, urged the public and private sector to work together to put transparent measures in place to prevent corruption in order to harness the potential of the blue economy for Africa.
Let me emphasize that efficiency, transparency, and integrity are simply imperative prerequisites to harness the gains from the blue economy, to ensure a high degree of African participation in the future of global trade.
The Minister for Public Enterprises, Joseph Kujo, stated the government of Ghana's support for integrity, transparency, and efficiency of the shipping industry to boost sustainable trade and commerce.
There is compelling need, therefore, for the maritime sector to formalize actions to combat bribery and corruption by collaborating and encouraging all stakeholders in the ship-shore interface to ensure compliance with national and international laws which prohibit bribery and corruption. Additionally, I will urge all countries and stakeholders present to work against corrupt practices by constantly focusing on establishing anti-corruption measures and or improve them when the measures already exist.
All right, so that was one event that took place in the port and shipping industry in the course of the week. It's now time for us to go to the global stage and find out what is happening there.
Denmark has launched the world's first digital ship register to increase security related to ship registration and ship trading. This week, Danish Maritime Authority rolled out a new digital ship register to ease the workload with faster and more efficient workflows for everyone working with the registration of ships in Denmark. The digital ship register went live on 16th January 2023. The register is expected to contribute to an extra layer of security and control in relation to ship registration. Concurrently, new legislation on ship registration comes into force. This includes both amendments to the Maritime Act and the new executive orders on ship registration. Singapore-based shipbuilder Sepcom Marine hosted a naming ceremony for the first of a series of LNG hybrid tugs specially designed for domestic service in Singapore. The Singapore-flagged vessel was christened JMS Sunshine by Ms. Wong Lee Ling, former executive director of Sebawang Shipyard, a wholly owned subsidiary of Sebcom Marine, and former head of repairs and upgrade at Sebcom Marine. Sebcom Marine plans to build a fleet of tugs to progressively replace the existing diesel-powered fleet operated by its subsidiary, Jurong Marine Services, and a licensed operator of the Maritime and Port Authority of Singapore. The company commissioned the design and construction of the world's first LNG hybrid tug in 2018.
All right, so you're welcome back. It's now time for us to take the word or the phrase of the day, and today's word or phrase of the day is terminal charge. Terminal charge.
Terminal charge is a charge made for a service performed in a terminal area, typically referring to handling associated with receipt, delivery, or inspection of cargo via land-based operations.
All right, so welcome back. We are now zooming into our discussion proper tonight, and tonight we are taking a look at the port marine operations and its role in global supply chain. Port marine operations and its, role in global supply chain. And with us to do the discussion tonight, we have Captain Francis Kwesi Micah. And Captain Francis Kwesi Micah is the Harbour Master for the Port of Tema. He's also the Port Facility Security Officer, Port of Tema. Good evening, sir, and welcome. Happy New Year.
Thank you, and same to you, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Good to have you for the first time for 2023.
Exactly.
So far, how has the year been?
Yes, the year has
21 days into...
Yes, 21 days,
yes.
Early days yet, I must say, but indications are that the volumes could pick up. Looking at the situation in China, which happens to be a point of interest as far as cargo sourcing is concerned, and the fact that they have gone down on their COVID requirements, it will mean that industries will be up again and shipping will also pick up. And of course, with the transition thereof, we expect to have more cargo coming in to our shores. So I think the prospects are quite good. So we'll see how Providence will actually be shining on us.
All right, great.
Yes.
Thank you very much indeed. Let me begin with the basics. I just want to find out from you, what is marine operations?
Yeah, actually, when we talk about marine operations, we are referring to a series of maritime procedures, that is actually aimed to ensure a smooth movement of cargo from various terminals. In other words, we will have a catalog of events that eventually will end up with the cargo coming to our port, and of course to the industry. And for the fact that we see the port as the conduit to the nation's commerce, that particular enterprise or activity is very, very important and critical.
Okay, so how has this particular function of port marine operations evolved over the years? Obviously, you started from a certain point, and over the years, you have had to perhaps adjust, add one or two things, modifications and all that. Can you run us through or walk us through how this evolution has been?
Yeah, with that, I must say it all boils down to the sophistication that the world, has opened itself up to. The type of cargo, the volume of traffic, the size of vessels, and interspersed with the handling activities. In other words, once we used to have just small crafts coming in, it did not require the sophistication of heavy-ended tugs to handle them. And the advent of electronic chart development system, that is a requirement for mariners, it will mean also an improvement in the caliber and proficiency of pilots who do that human job of bringing the vessels in. And that interspersed with the other activities like the signal station, the mooring men, the azimuth stand drive tugs, etc. It will mean that it has come from a standard operational level to a much more sophisticated end of activity.
Okay, so in all this, I know that we cannot talk about the global supply chain without mentioning port marine operations. Can you tell us the link or the linkage between these two?
Yeah, okay, let me make this, put up this scenario. Okay, say when we talk about, say, politicking of the land or for government, once we talk about, say, the White House, then we're talking about the citadel of administration in the U.S. In Ghana, homing into Ghana, when we say the Flagstaff House, then we're talking about the seat of government from where all the activities. Now, for the port in particular, we want to term them as the nexus in this same paradigm as to where everything starts and everything ends.
Right.
And to deliberate or to go more into it, we can talk about the supply chain link. Now, we have various modes of transportation. We can have the inter and we can have the intra. So once you're talking about the ports in other areas around the world, we can see that the cargo might have commenced its startup from a factory somewhere in a landlocked area. It could be freighted to a particular place, say by a train.
Right.
And then eventually it could come by small freighters to the major port, where eventually they get boxed up for them to make the sea voyage to another country or another place in the same region or in the same country.
Right.
And this chain of activities culminates in the port being the very critical point of the activities for seaborne trade. We're talking about numbers, and we are referring to about 90% plus of seaborne trade is what takes care of the world cargo. The rest is taken care of by the aviation industry. And now, so it could be the culmination of road, air, rail, and eventually coming to sea. But the bulk of it is balkanized.
Intermodal?
Exactly. That is intermodal. Now, intramodal would be when a bigger vessel, say, comes to the port of Tema, and then it will download some of its cargo or discharge some of its cargo to small freighters or to small cargo vessels that could be serving other ports, because the big vessels possibly could not make way to the smaller vessels or to some part of the region. So we could have transit points where the bulk of the cargo. I can go into specifics. Now, when we talk about this breakdown, say for the port of Tema, for example, we'll have balkanized cargo, say, from the Mediterranean.
Yes.
We can talk about the port of Algeciras or Marrakesh or whatever in Morocco, and then we can have a bulk coming in right from there, which has been transshipped from various ports in Europe. They will end up, say, in Algeciras, and then they will start their journey west or southwards to West Africa and beyond. We could also have a balkanized cargo coming from the Asian end, say from Singapore, from Malaysia. Actually, most of this cargo could have also been originated from Japan, from Korea, and then from China.
Right.
Now, once they end up, say, in Singapore, a place I love to talk about quite often, it means that the cargo then eventually will be shipped in volumes, high-end craft or ships that will make all their way, say, to the West African end and end up in Lome, Tema, Lagos, and Abidjan to do with the distribution.
Now, we're talking international trade facilitation. And I know, again, that there's a linkage between marine operations, port marine operations, and trade facilitation. How does this happen?
Okay. Now, I think the IMO, that wonderful organization set up under the arms of the United Nations, is very much responsible for that facility. So we have the facilitation committee. Actually, it's one of the IMO weapons that they use. And in that, they have a standardized form that would aid to facilitate trade. And by trade, they will have designated forms that will cater for, say, the crew list, that will cater for the bulk of cargo, the type, the description, the DG cargoes, even the vaccination list, etc., that are standard and accepted by both ports and ports all around the world. In that, once these things are brought to be inspected by local officials, by this I'm referring to customs, immigration, port health, planned quarantine, etc., including narcotic, etc., it becomes a standardized form for the facilitation of the vessel's entry into a customs regime port. And once that is done, it means that now the aperture is now open for trade to commence, for cargo to be discharged, and then for the other tributaries of trade like the clearance, the forwarding agents also take over, and for the cargo eventually, or for the product eventually to end up in our homes, at the factories, to help with the running of industries, and then for the final consumer to make absolute good use of.
You cannot have port marine operations without incidents. We know there are issues of safety, security, and all that. Can you tell us some of the issues that come up during your operations?
Yeah, okay, so I think it is all catalogued into so many spheres. I mean, I think we can all go back to recollect by law or by, by history, what happened on the Titanic. That culminated in us having one of the major architects of the maritime regulation world, and that is SOLA, Safety of Life at Sea.
Right.
Then we had issues with pollution. The Amoco Cadiz, I don't want to delve into all those things, but it also resulted in another strong pillar in the maritime industry called the, the aspect of controlling our theater in terms of environmental control. Okay. Then we had a recent case of the 9/11 incident. I must say that was fast-tracked, and the intelligence believed that eventually, possibly, since they had used the airplane, potential was that the next time it could be through the maritime industry. It could be a ship planting some explosive, something that could create mayhem in a port. So they developed the ISPS. And it therefore falls on the maritime industry, and especially the Harbour Master's Office or the Marine Operations Department, to ensure that all these safeguards are in place. So once we have the MARPOL regulation that I referred to that caters for pollution, the SOLA that mainly borders on safety, the ISPS, and of course one is to do with the training of personnel at sea, it puts it in that same intricate web of how, together with the application of all these regulations, we could have the fundamentals right in making sure that safety aspects are catered for. And when I talk about safety, I'm talking about safe movement of the vessels to and from port, the safety aspect of the equipment that you'll be using, even the boarding features, and then even in case of emergency, how the personnel on board could protect themselves by launching life-saving appliances, etc. So that is one aspect. Now, in terms of pollution, we know the effect it has on the environment, our flora and fauna in the ecosystem and the unbalancing act that it goes with. It will mean that any act of pollution needs to be well detected, but importantly, it has to be prevented by the implementation of standardized equipment and the regular inspection by the administration. In Ghana parlance, we can refer to that as being coming from the Ghana Maritime Authority that are mandated to have the port state control under the Abuja MOU to work out those modalities. But importantly, when it comes again to the security, under the guise of the ISPS, the Harbour Master actually also doubles as the port facility security officer, and he has a bench of assistants that also work with them. And regularly, we have the Port Facility Security Committee meeting up to discuss trends or developing trends as far as our security is concerned. In fact, the ISPS naturally serves to be the stock of interface between the vessels that are coming all the way from the high seas from another terminal and making an interface with the port. And that link is so critical because it could go either way.
Right.
So we go about in establishing declaration of security, etc., to ensure that both parties are sure that, look, my vessel is safe in your port, and then the port facility also ensures that, look, there's not going to be any added-on threat to the vessel while they are making that interface with the port. So that is generally that's how it works out. For security, for environment, and for the safety aspect.
Safety. I'll come to environment, but let me still dwell a bit with the issue of security and safety and how you tell us as a port, zeroing in on Port of Tema, we are faring.
All right. I think security has been very, very much positive. In fact, it has been above average in the West Coast. We have a basic threat, or we used to have a threat, which was basically on lines of stowaways. Stowaways to a larger extent based on the control measures that have been put in place has virtually been nipped in the bud. What we are even currently seeking to do is even to prevent the use of Tema Port as a place of landing stowaways that had been picked up by vessels, or for stowaways that have secreted themselves to vessels within the sub-region, and then wanting to, as it were, drop them in the port of Tema. And I will say that this has been, to a larger extent, based on the regularity of training, drills, and exercises, not only at the corporate level or at the port level, but we have also been part of international exercises, not to mention the Obangami exercises, etc. And then we have interagency exercises also that borders on security. We have had some with immigration, and then we've had some with the very sophisticated exercise that involved even the 1BN forces coming in to, actuate a bomb, improvised bomb, as it were, as a part of an exercise, which actually is also a requirement under the ISPS regime. So yes, to a large extent, the threat is very minimized. We do not have any other incidentals that comes out of Tema that will, as it were, bring down the level. So for most part of the time, we have been operating at security level 1, which means that the normal security situation that should pertain in any other port.
And so we are apt and in accordance with international best practice. Goes
to the teamwork of all security agencies that operate in the port. We're talking about the customs, we're talking about the BNI or NIB to be precise, we're talking about the immigration, and of course our diligent men of the GPHA Port Security Management Division.
Right. Okay, so let's now come to the issue of environment and find out what some of the environmental issues are that are linked to port marine operations.
Yeah, this I will say is more to do with pollution that comes from the cement factories around, with that, and sometimes some of the effluent that comes also from factories situate around the port region. The sourcing has never actually been from port operations per se, apart from the usage of, as it were, equipment that are not environmentally friendly. When we talk about, say, the discharge of clinker, etc., something that management is seriously tackling to ensure that we have eco-friendly hoppers that are used in the discharge of clinker and cement for that matter. But apart from that, oil pollution is on the minimum. When vessels are taking on bunkers, by bunkers I mean they are taking on fuel that is required for their operation, either for steaming or for running their engines or generators for that matter. Sometimes during the transfer, due to leakages in the hose connection at the manifold, and not taking off the back pressure, sometimes you have some kind of little spillage, but those are contained. But importantly is how the port is also equipped to contain these emergencies, I will say. It also has been forestalled primarily due to diligence and then the regularity of drills. In the port of Tema, we have an organization that is responsible for the management and operation of vessels that come to the oil jetty to discharge refined products to end users or to the oil marketing companies. And then we regularly have drills with them. In fact, the last was about 3 months back. And then the vessels that help with this combatant, that is the specialized vessels which we call the tugboats. The tugboats are all equipped with oil spill engaging activity materials. In other words, we have if a case, even if gets into the fire end, we have branches from the monitors that can be used to fight the fire. We have equipment that could be able to, once the spill is in the water, that could be able to collate and then bring all the oil sediments that have been brought to the surface and then place them into a holding tank to prevent inadvertent spreading and then also having the negative impact on our flora and fauna in the environment. So that is how it stands currently.
Okay, I'll come back to the issue of, Ghana our ports as a landing place for, stowaways and all that, for onward transfer to their respective countries and all that. But let me find out from you. You mentioned the issue of forestalling emergencies and all that. I just want to find out from you, what are some of the emergencies that arise as a result of your operations, and how are you always able to stem?
Okay, so we have the Port Emergency Response Team that is set up. And we have the health, safety, and environment, a very strong pillar in the affairs of GPHA as far as the forestalling of emergencies are concerned. And also, incidentally, the Harbour Master happens to be the incident commander for most emergencies that will come out of the port. And depending on the direct area of concern, we could have the on-scene commander. In other words, if it is something to do with cargo operations, wire parting and then causing damage to either cargo or person, then we will have the general manager, say, for operations to be on the scene to handle it. If it's fire, we have the fire manager going to a place, but it all routes out eventually to have all the communication and the control measures to be put in place, coordinated from the command post that happens to be the Harbour Master in this particular drive. Now, so the kind of emergencies that we are often involved in is petty fire. I mean, it could have been from the dry dock, it could have been from a hot work that didn't go well, despite the fact that we will have firemen on watch. But these things are all controlled. It could also be from that environmental concern that I talked about, like leakage. A vessel taking on bunkers, and then we will have an inadvertent spill from the manifold arrangement that happens to be on the ship side, and then having it contained. If it eventually ends in the water, yes, then we have the chemical that we need to use, of course, with permission from the Environmental Protection Agency. That is a requirement by law. But we have the containment of foam, and then we have the sawdust, etc., to prevent the spray or to help with the mopping up. Another kind of emergency, I must say, is to do with when vessels come to the anchorage area without our notice. In other words, they try to secret themselves to engage in what we term illegal bunkering activity. And that is often at times countered by the resilience of the Sea Patrol section of the, it's a combined force of the Marine Operations Department and the Security Department, because we have our patrol launches or security launches, but we go with a team made up of men from the Security Department. Sometimes we include external assistance from the Navy, the Marine Police, and then we go out on the beat regularly on the patrols to try to nip these activities. And once they are apprehended, of course, they are brought into the creek, the Marine Creek, and then the necessary sanctions get followed by giving them up to the Marine Police for them to be processed or prosecuted. Another major concern, I must say, is to do with the influx of the fisherfolk. That is more of a safety concern, I must say. When they sometimes breach our waters, breach our channels, especially the channel that leads to Terminal 3, and they need to be warded off. But because of their spurious activity, because you have them at one end of the anchorage or the entrance of the main port, you whisk them out, and then they end up at another end. Knowing that we have an LNG terminal, and the consequences of these activities do not, go on well with the prime conduct of the activities of the port. Because once a vessel is making way through a narrow tunnel or a designated channel, the vessel passage should not be impeded by these fisher folks, because it could end up with the master of the vessel taking evasive action and potentially or possibly ending up in shallow ground, and that will cause a real cost in terms of the movement of vessels to the port and the effect on the economy. I talked about the commerce aspect, and the consequences are huge. Not to take you back, we all know what happens in the Suez Canal when that vessel got stuck in there, and world trade was really hampered to some extent. So basically, these are the challenges and emergencies that we are confronted. Not so regular, but often at times, yes. But I must say, with the regularity of training and drills and exercise. That happens to be the main framework of support that every enterprise will need once you want to get your act together to be able to confront these menace.
All right, emanating from your last submission, the issue of illegal bunkering, how rampant is it in our waters?
Well, okay, so when we take the port of Tema, the port of Tema is the water basin or the harbor basin and the earmarked anchorages. Most of these illegal bunkering, I must say, takes place outside the anchorage. I must say there must be some few which are during the patrolling of the boat, they get accosted. But most of this illegal activity of bunkering, which is a real menace, takes place outside the port limit, that is the OPL.
Yes.
And the Navy has been very, very cracking their whip on this particular menace, and they've accosted a lot of people. In fact, that is where the collaboration comes in, because once they are found out there engaging in this illicit activity, we have a hotline that gets contacted, and then we are able to assist them by giving them a good berth for eventual prosecution and processing of the criminals are concerned. So that takes place often at times at the outer port limit, the OPL to be precise.
You've also mentioned the issue of patrols, where you go in your quest to find out some of these activities, to nip them, to perhaps... Do you often cause arrests?
Yes, so as I said earlier on, to give us that baton, that muzzle, we go with a combined team, and that includes members from the Ghana Navy, members from the Marine Police, either two have not had their boat, but information that I have is that, well, it's not for me to say, they will be expecting to have their boats in land shortly so that they will have their independent patrol, because they have the onus of responsibility to be prosecuted.
Right.
But we are there to give them that support, because we have some patrol boats. Ghana Maritime Authority do also have, and they are also with us on that fight. So the patrolling goes on in there, and once they are accosted.
So the patrolling basically is done with the Ghana Navy, Marine Police, Ghana Maritime Authority,
and then
GPHA. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
So once they are accosted, they are routed and brought back to the creek, and then eventually get sent to the Marine Police for processing, eventually to get to the court. But I must say one hindrance has been on the issue of logistics, the numbers. And GPHA has been very solid on that in terms of strategy. As we speak, we have on order new security boats that we're expecting in a couple of months to augment the fleet that we have. That will give us that spirited advance of going into various action in situ at the same time to be able to combat this one. If you remember, as I was saying earlier on, we could have them crossing or disturbing the safe passage of vessels in the passage plan from the Terminal 3, and then at the same time they could be around the LNG terminal, or even they could come into the oil jetty base, causing menace and disturbing the peace and quiet that is required for the discharge of, I must say, specialized cargo like refined products. You know, we do not have to have people around there possibly trying to go around the pipelines, etc., which might cause some damage or so hamper prevention. So that is basically that. So we expect that once we have additional sea patrol boats, they could put us in that formidable posture to be able to handle this menace.
Can you share what our strength is at the moment in terms of numbers or with respect to patrol boats?
So for the port of Tema, we have 2 crafts that we are using for patrols. And I must say, one is by design a security patrol. The other one has a dual function, but because of the size and the economics of the layout, we're able to use that during the daytime as a patrol boat. But because we have GMA also having a lot of boats also in the Marine Creek or in the basin, they also go on the patrol. And we have jointly discussed this strategy, and then sometimes they go to some area But we are always in link via radio to be able to support each other once one gets overwhelmed with the tax of overbearing or the nuisance becoming too much of an issue. So we have 2 for Port of Tema. We are expecting another 1 for Port of Tema. Another 1 will go to the Port of Takoradi, and then another patrol boat. Another pilot boat. Now the interest is that by design, though pilot boats are earmarked for a particular purpose of pilotage, where one is having some logistical concern or damage or needs to go through some maintenance, the pilot boat sometimes can be used to go to assist, the designated security boat that requires additional assistance to be able to combat a crime.
All right. So when a vessel is apprehended for illegal bunkering or some other illegal activity in our waters, and the team makes the arrest, you mentioned the fact that they are processed for court.
Yeah.
Does prosecution really take place, or how are they handled in the end?
Yes. So for us as GPHA, ours is to keep the entry in and out of the port safe.
Right.
And if we believe that these activities, 1, because they are not taking place under the ordinance of good protocols, could cause that environmental disturbance that we talked about. Our concern is to keep the waters safe, environmentally safe, and then security-wise, we are okay. Now, once these guys are accosted, it is in our ambit to send them over to the recognized setup, in other words, the police, to carry on with the prosecution. And when we have our regular maritime or the Port Facility Security Committee, we try to get feedback from various or previous cases on how they fit. Yes, and indications are that, yes, some cases end up at the court, some of them for want of evidence, not to say the physical evidence, but the supporting evidence or the strength of the prosecution, it falls out. But most cases, I think they're able to flush them and deal with them in the law courts.
All right. So let's come back to the issue of Ghana and being a landing space for, what do we call it, stowaways and all that.
Okay.
How and why was Ghana our ports chosen to handle this particular issue?
Yes, it's something that some of us actually recognize, that it was like they saw ports in Ghana to be a safe haven or a safe conduit to easily land. And from our experiences, for some of us, other countries had made it difficult. So to counter this, some punitive fines have been introduced in the tariffs to make it not convenient for shipmasters or for P&I clubs to work out the issue. A recent case, I must say, a vessel that started its voyage from a port in Nigeria, unfortunately had picked up 11 stowaways. And then just before arrival, they indicated to the Harbour Master's office that they had these numbers, and this was coming from the PLI, and they wanted to land well. Despite the fact that there are punitive sanctions which could have been used to serve as a deterrence, apparently for some of them, it's like the convenience was still there. But the onus of responsibility and the orders of the Harbour Master, can say no to that.
Right.
And this time it was a big no. And the big no, therefore, thwarted the attempt of making them land the stowaways in port. Because if the origin had been just a West African country, it was just okay that the vessel had to go back to drop them. And they had also indicated they didn't have their passport or any documentation, but they knew for sure that they had boarded. And when it comes to these matters, sometimes people get the act wrong. Who is responsible for the stowaway that you might have carried, where it might have been. The master, by law, is always responsible if you inadvertently carry out. And this is under the ordinance of the ISPS code. This has been whipped up on several occasions. So you cannot put or bring pressure to bear on the port to say that you have a stowaway and need to land. What you could do is to take the miscreant back to the port of origin and then disembark them. If it is due to some health hazards and, of course, other emergencies, like they got sick or they are injured or what have you, something that requires some kind of emergency on humanitarian basis, such admissions could be granted. But for now, we're trying to make it very, very difficult for stowaways that have started from another front in another sector of the maritime world to be brought to Tema to be dropped. And it all happens because West Africa has that menace.
Yeah.
So from Cameroon, from Abidjan, from Lagos, Apapa, and Lome, or Cotonou, and they feel that well because hitherto it has been okay. We are trying to put the brakes on that and then to prevent this activity from becoming much more like a point of interest to land these refugees.
Now, do we make any gains? Or better still, are we paid for this particular role that we are playing?
Can you get what particular role in particular? That to get the stowaways?
Yes.
No. It's by, IMO has guidelines on the handling of stowaways. Stowaways are supposed to be treated very well. Supposed to be given all the assistance as they are required and possibly to be repatriated to their home ground. They, of course, once they get to their home country, then they become prosecuted for trying to, spirit themselves into a vessel illegally under the transport laws or the local laws.
Yes.
But internationally, once a stowaway is found, apart from the charges or the financial cost, I must say, nothing actually becomes beneficial to the recipient. So it is not for any reason that a port or any facility will want to entertain the stowaways. If the stowaways had gone on board, say, from Tema, then that becomes a different, and there is proof. Then, of course, once they land, what happens is the Port Security Department, the Intelligence Department will be there. They will also have officers from Ghana Immigration Service. They will go to conduct interview, due diligence, and then once they're able to see what are the embers in that particular scenario, then they could decide to disembark or, and again, arrange repatriation. And all these costs, if immigration is the dutiful organization to handle it, the charges thereof will be borne by the agency of the vessel that might have carried the stowaway. But for the port, we are just to facilitate the movement from the craft onto the designated agency immigration, and then that is that. Now, the reason why we have taken up this strong arm is for all lines and purposes for national security. Because you realize that, and from experience, some of these stowaways are fugitives. With some criminal background. So one has to be very, very careful in just giving them free movement into the country, and especially if they have originated from a country nearby. Because if inadvertently or if something goes wrong and they are able to move from the clutches of, say, the immigration or from the security agencies, it will mean that we find themselves with us, and that causes social unrest, social problems, or security problems, which we want to forestall.
All right. Okay, so let's, would you mind walking us through some of the operational procedures in port marine operations?
Yeah, okay, so, so let me start by saying the marine operations itself has 3 key sections. We have the pilots or the pilotage, and then we have the communicators, like we say, people at the signal station. And then we'll have persons, those who drive the tugboats, who assist the pilot. So the first line of a vessel's entry is often at times through the signal station. We have the electronic vessel booking system, some wonderful IT setup set up by GPHA, as it were, to prevent the interface of a lot of paperwork. The agencies use that. They do their booking, making reference to the IMO number of the vessel, which is very sacrosanct to any kind of vessel. So there are ways of checking or verifying the genuinity of these vessels that want to make the visit. And then in it, it will be described, we'll have description of the the type of vessel, the cargo intends to discharge, the volume, the GRT for finance people to do their computation for their revenue, etc. So the signal becomes the first point. And then they will have to be sending this information for approval to be given. And then additionally, they will send other documents to support their crew list, their cargo list, and then the IMDG cargo, and importantly, their maritime declaration of health. You know, and that became very critical during the COVID era. Of course, we are still with COVID, but in the peak of COVID, that was very, very, very important. Now, once that is processed, then the vessel, again, the master of the vessel will give 72-hour notice, 48 hours notice, 12 hours notice, and then 6-hour notice before the vessels come. Now, all that information is processed and rolled onto a document we call the Ship Gazette. With the information captured on the Ship Gazette, the Harbour Master will task his Deputy Harbour Master Operations to be present at the berthing meeting, where it's a culmination of ship agencies, freight forwarders, and other agencies that are linked with vessels operation.
Right.
Where that schedule is fully discussed, and then the allotment purely on first-come, first-served basis, apart from some vessels that have dedicated berths, like the oil jetty vessels come to discharge oil, and then the container vessels, and then some vessels that come to discharge or work out the fruits. In other words, product with the fruit empire. So that is done, and then it is sorted out.
Right.
That is done in advance. So regularly we have that meeting on Mondays and then Friday. And then it comes out as the postings for the vessels that are expected.
Right.
Once the vessel comes to our shore, it is therefore advised by the signal station to either drop anchor or to proceed to the pilot station. Or if there's a waiting period, she needs to hang around a bit or to drop anchor or to call short stay momentarily just to await the berth. Once the vessel is now ready to pick pilot or to embark a pilot, it will mean that the berth is free.
Right.
Or the berth is available. And then another wing of the department, that is a pilotage section, will go with the pilot launch and then go and board the vessel. Once they board the vessel, the pilot's first activity is to go through what we call the master pilot exchange, where they exchange information purely based on factors that will help assist in the conduct of the vessel from outside the port area, in other words, at the pilot boarding station, safely to berth. And you might ask, for example, why do we have to put on a pilot? Well, it's a standard maritime practice, and in our laws, PNDC law, 160, chapter, how do you call it, section 33, it is taxed that vessels making such movement need to be piloted by GPHA pilots, unless they've been granted an exemption. Likewise, if you have to go between some district, etc., pilotage district, also it is by law established that we need to place on board a pilot who is licensed, who is seen to be proficient, who is certified by the port to be able to conduct that safe passage. Once the pilot does that and then exchanges that information and then shares with the master the plan or the passage plan to the berth as identified, en route, whilst from the pilot station into the port area, tugs will come to assist, and there it will depend. If the vessel is, in terms of size, for the general public, 10,000 GRT gross tonnage, it will mean that one tug will be required. If it is big, it is 2 tugs. When we have the very big one, the 300 plus ships, it requires 3 tugs. And then they are all not free services, it's chargeable. So then the pilot will now be in the company of the tugboats, also operated by the tug masters with his team or with his crew of either the tug mate and then the deckman that will take on horses, that will take on ropes, that will help steer and guide the vessel safely to the designated berth until the vessel is fast. In other words, the vessel is very much well secured, and then the pilot safely disembarks. Then we can say that the vessel has come safely to berth. In between time, because the tugmen or the tugboats are afloat, the pilot is on board the master craft, we need to have the longshoremen, in our parlance we call them mooring men, who will be there to take on the ropes from the vessel to be placed on the bollards for the vessel's crew to heave them up at designated times and periods, best advised by the pilot with the master to safely bring the vessel safely alongside. Here it is worthy of mention that the pilot going on board does not take over the command of the vessel. The pilot goes in an advisory role, actually, as a servant of the owner, in other words, in the owner's employ, to assist the safe conduct of her vessel. So the master will be there. That is why that master-pilot exchange is in there. So those of you or people who are not conversant with it, that is actually the standard practice of bringing it. So then you see that you could have all the sections of the department at play here. The signal, the pilots, the tug masters and the tugboats, and then the mooring men with their launches all go in there. In other beds, they require the services of mooring boats, especially like the oil jetty, where they will have to take the rope and travel some distance to place them on the bollards before they are safely heaved up to safely secure the vessel.
All right. Port operations, that's port marine operations and its impact role in the global supply chain. That's what we're discussing tonight on Iron Port here on Metropolitan Television. Our guest in the studios is Captain Francis Kwesi Micah, the Harbour Master for the Port of Tema. He's also the Port Facilities Security Officer. We're going for a quick break. When we bounce back, we'll activate the phone lines for you to call in and contribute to the discussion. We shall also share with you some messages that have come through. Please do stay with us.
Every now and again, Goil makes good things happen. This time, Goil has introduced Super XP Ron 95, a higher grade fuel loaded with additives and yet sold at the same price as normal fuel. Goil Super XP Ron 95 enhances engine performance like never before. It maintains the engine by keeping it clean from carbon deposits. Goil Super XP Ron 95 is designed to burn slowly and thus improves fuel economy, making you save money after several kilometers. Goil Super XP Ron 95 gives you a smooth driving experience, that is, less vibrations. Fill up with Goil Super XP Ron 95. Now there's no need to pay more for any higher grade fuel. Goil has that sorted. Goil, good energy.
Our taxes, our future.
Because you see, without our taxes, we wouldn't have good roads, good schools, better hospitals, street lights, and other very important social amenities. When we pay our taxes, we give our children free and quality education. Talga, my money too small. Why should I pay my tax? Look, small. Salifo, it doesn't matter how small or big your business or income is, you still have to pay your taxes. The little taxes from each and every one of us, one put together, could give your community clean water, or that deprived school with tables and chairs. Please pay your taxes. It is your responsibility. It is your civic duty. It is the law.
Impressive factory. If only I had listened to you, I wouldn't have been in this mess. That devastating fire virtually wiped out the whole factory and my warehouse.
Remember my misfortunes last year? Serene Insurance Asset All Risk Fire policy that I took were there to pay for my damaged stocks in the warehouse. And my machines that were affected by the floods have been replaced. My accident vehicle is back on the road thanks to Serene Insurance motor policy. Currently, my goods are on the high seas covered with their marine cargo insurance policy. I was just telling Ajima about Serene Insurance. Oh, Ajima, tell him more.
As a road contractor, I make sure I do my contractors all risk insurance for the project and then workers' compensation for all the workers on site. With Serene Insurance, they will make sure they will cover your unknown tomorrow today.
Serene Insurance, a new face of insurance. Call us now.
MPS Terminal 3 is Africa's new state-of-the-art container terminal at Tema Port. For manufacturers, agro-processors and traders, the new port means business can be done faster. This infrastructure boost will improve Ghana's port handling capacity, connect more trading routes, and oil the engine of growth for the economy, creating greater opportunities across all sectors as Africa's markets merge and become the largest trading bloc globally. MPS, we connect, you thrive.
All right, you're welcome back. This is Metropolitan Television and the program is Eye on Port. And tonight we're discussing port marine operations and its role in the global supply chain. And we have this news, Captain Francis Kwesi Maika, the Harbour Master and Port Facility Security Officer for the Port of Tema. Now, I've been told by the production team that the lines have been activated. You can call in and contribute to the discussion. The number to dial is 020-552-8353, 020-552-8353. You can call in. But let me go into the mailbox and then come your way with some messages that have come through. This one says, my name is Atu. Why are stowaways in other countries brought to Ghana? I think Captain explained that. But Captain, if you can note it and then respond. This one is coming from Bob in Tema. He says, I know a lot of activities in ports are being privatized in the world today. Why has GPHA maintained that marine services be done by the authority? I think you would want to take these two and then we would continue.
All right. Thank you. So I want to start from the last, why
we are maintaining marine operations.
Yes. The GPHA, as a matter of policy, has taken a strong point in saying that we are going to go for the blend, for the...
Okay. Captain, before you continue, we have a call on the line. Thomas is calling us from Tema, so let's welcome him onto the show. When he's done, we'll continue with to take your response. Good evening, sir.
Hi, sir.
Yes, please shoot.
Please, my name is Thomas Egan.
Right. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I'm calling from Tema Port.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I'm a security man.
Yes.
I'm a part of a security patrol team.
Okay.
And the addition to the Harbour Master contribution is our patrol on the vessel that came to Anchorage without knowledge of port control.
Okay.
Normally, we take the vessel's name, the vessel that came to Anchorage. So on our patrols, when we come, then we find out your name is not in the list. We pick the vessels, the captain name, and the vessel's number and everything. Then we send it to port control to deal with them.
Okay.
That's my yes, sir.
Thomas, thank you very much indeed.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for choosing us. We are grateful. Okay, so you may continue.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Thomas. Yeah, so what I was referring to actually is the hybrid system that GPHA has, as a matter of preference, decided to adopt.
Yes.
In that most part of our revenue comes from the marine operations.
Right.
And we already have contractual agreement with some stakeholders, GPMS, the LNG, the Terminal 3 operations to work out this important part. Now, in other jurisdictions that people might say that they are having these, they have other sources of revenue. And they have the largest of land to be able to get revenue from in terms of the activities that take place in those enterprises.
Yes.
But to take out marine operations is, as it were, just to neutralize GPHA for that matter. So as a matter of principle, the hybrid system is what policy-wise has been adopted.
Okay.
Now,
let me you come to the other one, but let's welcome George from Kumasi onto the show. Good evening, sir. Hello, George.
Yeah, hello.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah, I'm calling from Kumasi, Africa, George Amwa.
Yes, Mr.
Yes,
Amwa,
Ghana
please go.
National, yeah, 81. Yes, I've listened to Captain.
Yes.
And he has spoken extensively on measures that are put
Yeah.
at the Harbours for safe vetting of ships. But still, And at times, we just have people stolen away in ships to destinations abroad. Why is it that?
Captain, did you get him?
He's talking about stowaways.
Okay, all right, sure. Thank you very much, George. We are grateful. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, okay, so it still borders on the matter of stowaway.
Yes.
One, now, the last caller, George,
Yes.
referring to that, he feels still there are incidents of stowaway. Well, from the records are there to be checked. Last year, this year, so far, 2021, we've not had an incident of stowaways emanating from the port of Tema. So that is a record of fact.
Okay.
And for the issue that I actually highlighted a lot on why masters or agencies or P&I clubs prefer to land the stowaways, because measures have been so lax and so amenable for them to use that facility.
Right.
Look, I can share with you the experiences that I had. And when we sailed from West Africa to areas of Singapore and beyond, ports in South Africa, they make it very difficult.
Right.
In fact, virtually to zero for you to be able to land a stowaway, even if you might have had the stowaway from any West African port. Therefore, it requires on the master, as I said earlier on, to ensure that the stowaway issue itself, and there are a series of checklists and control measures,
Right.
that masters, know how to go about to ensure, with all the CCTV and the sophistication of technology, stowaways are only able to get on board vessels when there's lax, when there is a breach of security,
Right.
either from the shore end or from the ship end, or a complicity of both.
All right.
And I will say that...
Before you continue, Captain, I think we have Aziz, who's calling us from Kumasi. Let's welcome him, and then welcome you. Continue, sir.
Okay.
Aziz, good evening, sir.
Fine, sir, boss.
Great to have you on the show. Please flow.
One of my grandpa says, as to ask you, why don't you make this program cheap so that most of the people will hear what you are talking about? Because if not, they say you are cheating us. To him, he thinks you are cheating us because most of the Ghanaians...
Aziz, respectfully, can you lower the volume on your TV? Because
there's nothing here. There's nothing here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then if you can take the phone a bit, far from your mouth, I think that will be fine, because it looks quite inaudible.
Are you okay with me right now?
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, it's clear now.
Yeah, I said one of my grandpas says, as you set a program like this, you should make it cheap, because most of the who are expecting you right now.
Right.
Yeah. So they just don't understand about what the company is saying.
Okay.
So it's making program like this so that yes.
Yo. All right.
Yes. That's how my grandpa said I should ask you.
Aziz, CP. You need paying for Becca, so why? Thank you very much indeed. Yes. Okay. Captain, please.
So on the as I had made my push on earlier on, is to make it not so easy to facilitate their disembarkation in our port,
right?
Because of the potential security hazards and risk that this poses to our country. And therefore, despite the fact that some fines have been placed in a set of tariffs, that gets slapped on the vessel's agency that brings in the stowaway.
Right.
We feel that unless even on that particular front, it should be on humanitarian grounds, like somebody who is sick or who is in some kind of danger.
Yes.
But if it is a clear-cut case of stowaway boarding a vessel and then you just out of not making an effort to take the vessel back to the origin to disembark and making it easier for the vessel to continue on this passage, no, we'll make it very, very, very uncomfortable and not so good for you too.
All right. We are going to Tema to welcome Kweku onto the show. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. My name is Kweku.
Yes, please.
I'm calling from Tema.
Right. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I know about a little about PNDC Law 160.
Okay.
And I was told, I read that GPHA is the only GPHA that has the right to operate tugboats. I hope there will not be an instance whereby we will see any private ports operating tugboats. Yes.
All right. Thank you very much. Captain will respond to that, but I saw him shaking his head in disagreement. Maybe.
I have one. Hello?
Yes, Kweku.
And also,
yes,
I was told that there's some 20% this thing that GPHA is going to get from MPS. I hope it's going to take effect.
Well,
because,
off the top of my head, we're told that it was going to take effect from the 1st of January. So we assume that it's taking effect.
Yeah, my brother, I have brothers over there, so I'll be listening from them.
You are fighting for your brothers, okay? All right, thank you very much indeed, Kweku. We are grateful to you for your call.
All right, Kweku. Thanks for the question, but just to set the record straight, the law that I referred to did not talk about the tugboat or the operation of the tugboat. It was to do with the requirement and the mandatory requirement for vessels to use GPHA pilots in the safe conduct of the vessel once they are taken in berth, unless they have been granted exemption.
Right.
For tugboats, we have a lot of privately owned tugboats that are in the country that sometimes even we fall on to assist or recommend for them to engage in other activities. So it is a big no. It is not the case that the law refers to tugboats, and then any tugboat operator, once licensed, is of course free to engage in a sphere of activity. Thank you.
All right. So let's go on to the phone lines again. We have Kojo, who's also calling in from Tema. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. My name is Kojo Afizi, calling from Tema.
Right. Please flow.
I would want to ask Captain, there's this misconception that if it is so, that stowaway now is a bit of a business whereby people that go on the stowaway, when they come back, are being given money. I want to know whether it is true.
I've been what?
Kojo, can you come again? Captain is not clear with the question.
Okay, so there's this perception that stowaway now is a bit of a business whereby people intentionally go on the stowaway and make themselves being caught so that they are giving money when they are being caught and come back.
Okay, I see. All right, Captain would help us with that.
Okay, Kojo, really I've heard you, but there's no remit to that. That there is a process where a stowaway, in fact, once you are arrested, once you are caught, you are processed because you might have engaged or attempted to engage on the free passage, and that is illegal. So rather, you get prosecuted, you are not rewarded. So that's to set the record straight.
All right. Thank you very much indeed, Captain. Let's move on to other messages, but you can also call in and contribute to the discussion. This one says, it's from Stella. She's sending it in from Tamale. She says, why is the Harbour Master of the Port the lead coordinator for ISPS compliance activities?
Oh, that's a good one. So the Harbour Master is, by the job description, expected to have greater understanding of the ongoings on vessels. And like I indicated earlier on, ISPS is the interface between the port facility and the ship. Now, you will be dealing with the ship master, who might also be the SSO, the ship security officer.
Respectfully, Captain, if you hold your fire, let's go and welcome Esther onto the show. Then when she's done, you continue, please. Hello, Esther. Good evening.
Please, my name is Sylvester. I'm
Sylvester.
a man.
Okay, sorry. I heard Esther. That's fine. Sorry. Please, pardon me. Please go ahead, sir.
Please, I would like to address this matter because it seems a lot of foreigners are taking advantage of our businesses in Ghana here, especially talking about Rosewoods. How do they check and find out that there are a lot of people who are still engaging in that business? And there was a circumstance that happened in Tema. These woods were dropped in a yard. But it came that a lot of people from the TTID and even that goods was arrested at, where do we call it, Achimota.
Sylvester, before you proceed, which yard was it?
This is a yard in Tema around Cocoa Board, opposite Cocoa Board. They call Timber area.
Okay. All right, please flow. Go ahead.
So as they came and saw the goods, they came and it seems they were compensated by the owner of the goods. But these have containers. I even have the container numbers, and I reported to the TTID in Accra. And these goods were watched and they were passed away from Ghana here outside. How come these people can come into our country, enter into our bush, cut all these things, and they can maneuver and cross our border and reach where they are going?
Okay. All right, Sylvester, so please don't hang up. My production team will get in touch with you, take your number, and then we'll take your matter up from there and see what we can do about it. We thank you so much for your concern. I think that is a legitimate one you are raising, and so we'll try and see how we can elicit some responses for you. Thank you very much indeed. Captain, please.
Yes.
Your role as lead facilitator of ISPS.
Yeah, so the Port Facility Security Officer, I'm saying, falls on the shoulders of whoever functions as the Harbour Master, because it is so the fact that the Harbour Master, whoever sits on that chair, will be averse with all the rudiments of the waterfront, the marine trade, and will have a better opportunity to have an interface with the ship security officer who happens to be the security in charge of the vessel. And so that is how it just works out. And in most jurisdictions, that is how it works out. But I must say, in some instances, they have a standalone port facility security officer, not necessarily doubling up as the Harbour Master, who functions in that capacity.
Right.
So, but for GPHA, that is the setup, and that is how it stands.
All right, this one says, my name is Phoebe. How are tugboats, as small as they are, able to pull big merchant vessels to port? I'm curious and I wish to understand.
Okay, so yes, they are cute. We call them she's. They are ladies, and but they have the potential of being able to pull mighty vessels of higher gross registered tonnage. The tugboats, therefore, are tagged or are classified based on their bollard pool. Now, so in GPHA, as it stands here for the port of Tema, we have 3 tugboats that are classed under the 60 bollard pool. That is their strength. It's a measure. It's a bit technical. I don't want to.
All right. So let's take our last caller, Captain. So when we come, you would have the time to, respond to all the messages that we have here. And so it gives me pleasure to invite or to welcome Entry from Ashama onto the show. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Yes, please shoot.
Yeah, I can see that Captain is on top of his work. The way he has dealt with the issue.
By all standards, yes. Yeah.
Yes, kudos to him. And also, Iron Port helper has understand the issues of the port. Kudos to this program. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. All right. I think it was just a commendation to you, Captain.
All right. So thank you, Entry, for the compliment. Yes. So back to the issue of the classification on how cute or how small the tugboats look, and their hidden strength that lies within the configuration of their build. In terms of the steel, in terms of the design, in terms of their bollard pool, based on how they are built and how they are tested to be, and importantly, with the type of maneuvering or engines that they use.
Yes.
It gives them that power that gets translated through recommended tow lines, or what we call the horses, to connect the tugboat to the mother vessel, to be able to pull and yaw and run them around. So the modernity, that was actually cascades down to the first question that you asked about how we have improved or how we have moved down up the line in terms of the sophistication of movement. Because we have heavier vessels or heavy vessels, I'm saying for the port of Tema, we're able to berth safely a 366-meter vessel.
Okay, so I think we can see
this particular thing on the screen.
Yes.
Yes, this is a very huge vessel, a 366 type. Belong, I believe, to Max Klein, and then you have one tug on the bow, that is the forepart of the vessel, and the other one on the stern, that is the rear end of the vessel. That will help with the steering, and based on the masters and the pilot's combined order to help with that. And they have what we call the azimuth stern drives. That means that once even they are facing one particular location, they're able to move in various directions, 360-wise.
Right.
You know, that's what the azimuth stands for. And then the potential that is wielded in them gives them the potential to be able to work out the magic in handling this caliber of vessels in the port. So you see them as small,
so
but
I
they are
think
strong.
there are 4 tugboats there. One is at the other end, and we can see 3.
What we are seeing is the Vashant one. That was the LNG project, the second vessel, that is the floating storage unit when we're bringing in. When our guys went for the simulation training, and by design, it was tasked that for such movement, you needed 3 boats to engage and 1 on standby. So you can see 1 is on standby at the bow, just assisting in pushing them to the dolphins to secure them. This was the facility that was going to store the LNG that will have come to the facility before they get routed through the regasification unit before it went to the facility at the oil or the gas station.
Okay. Now this one says, I know there were some standard operating procedures for the handling of crew during the peak of COVID, where your outfit played a key role. Can you touch on what the operational procedure is like now that COVID is reduced?
All right, thank you. Yeah, so now that COVID is reduced, yes, I'm glad he used it's reduced. It's not the processes where we required so many areas to be worked out has been downsized to just the basic rudiments. So once you have a crew to join or to disembark, all you need is to send a notification to the harbour master. Of course, with that, the customs, the immigration, the port health, they are all in the loop. And we follow just the procedure of embarking a passenger on the vessel, for that matter, a crew, by checking if you have something to declare by customs, if you're health-wise in terms of your yellow vaccination, you are gone in consonance with all the requirements, including the COVID vaccine, and then immigration, of course, to check your traveling document, and then you are good to go. So the issues have just been reduced to the barest minimum as is required under the FAL Convention. Okay.
This one is on Facebook. Ernest Panful. I think Ernest is with the Security Department. Yeah, he sent in this. He says, good to hear the prospects are high, with China being the springboard for high volumes. And he continues, Captain Francis Kwesi Micah, a very competent master mariner, technically steering the affairs of the Tema Harbour to the admiration of all. It's an immense blessing to be under your tutelage. May God bless you abundantly. Well, that's from him to you.
I'm humbled here.
Before we wrap up, I just want you to tell us something brief about your role as the harbour master.
Well, so the harbour master's role is a bit loaded, I must say. Being the charge of the department that is at the fulcrum of basically the affairs of all that we do in the port. But basically is to coordinate all the activities that will eventually end up in the vessels having a safe berth. We also rally our efforts in conjunction with the hydro surveyor, to regularly do surveys to determine the depth of water purely on safety reasons, so that we can at all times be sure of what the under-keel clearance is once the vessel is making passage to a berth. We are also to help recommend and train prospective pilots, and eventually for them to be certified by the pilotage board. And then among others also, we are responsible, or the harbour master is responsible for the allotment as is required for the various kinds of vessels that come into port and the various berths that they need to be at what time of the tide for safety reasons. And then not to talk about the security aspect, we also happen to be, or the harbour master happens to be, the main instrument of contact once any advice on nautical matters needs to go into higher quarters, to my director or to the Director General for that matter. So basically, and in a nutshell, that is what the HM does.
This is a quick one. It says, the Director of Port is clearly on top of her job. I'm very impressed. This battle too is the Lord's. There's no name. And it continues, what about the boarding unit of customs who board every ship prior to cargo discharge at the ports?
Yeah, so I touched on that as a requirement under the FAL Convention, and I touched on that briefly again for somebody who is about to embark or disembark, if you have something to clear. It is a customs port. That is what we should not lose sight of. And every cargo that comes in goes into the ambit, it's a revenue basket for the government. Right. We shouldn't forget that. So customs is very much needed to check the documents, the manifest, etc. That might have been processed, but crew's declaration also come in there. Right. And we need to know whether there are some goods that need to, if the crew has a contraband or an illegal matter, has to be worked on. So it is a requirement as established by law and under the rudiments of the IMO facilitation requirement.
Okay. This one says, you said in your interview that the Marine Department brings in the revenue. My question is, one, how are the pilots trained to meet the international standards? And two, how well are the pilots paid since they play a major role in bringing in the vessels? This one is from Kofi in Takoradi. Just briefly, we have to.
Yeah, briefly, Kofi. Well, I would not want to touch, I want to talk about motivation. Yes, but they are trained by the senior pilots that might have gone through, or that might have gone through already the process. You know, you start from the pilot training, you end up as a pilot and a senior pilot, potentially a deputy harbor master, the logistics or operations, and it will culminate in you becoming the harbor master. So with your years of attachment, your proficiency improves, your efficiency becomes very much top-notch. And then sometimes there are exchange programs that the pilots go through. We have some simulation training that we sometimes send them to undergo, and then also some partnership that we have with the Danish government in terms of training both the TAC masters and then the pilots to, as it were, to get advanced, to be abreast with the modernities of the equipment that most vessels now carry. I talked about electronic charge distribution system, etc. So these are the activities that we go. Apart from that, we have regular training or induction in terms of novelties that come into the industry for them to be abreast with norms and the standard practices. So our activities are at best. We have a form that we share with the masters, and the feedback that we've been receiving is that our pilots, I think, to the betterment of all, are doing a yeoman job. And I doff my hat out to them in whatever they do under my command.
Thank you very much indeed. Captain Francis Kwesi Maika. He is the Harbour Master for the Port of Tema. He also doubles as the Port Facility Security Officer. And tonight we've been discussing the port marine operations and its role in the global supply chain. Remember, this abridged version of the show will be aired on Ghana Television on Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Make a date and watch that. We say maximum thanks to our sponsors, Ghana Regional Authority, Goyle Company Limited, Serene Insurance, Ghana Link Network Services, and Meridian Port Services, MPS. My name is Kennedy Mona. God willing, next week we shall bounce back with another wonderful edition of Iron Port. Please do stay tuned and watch the rest of the programs here on Metro TV, and have a super week ahead. Good evening.
Metro TV, insightful and inspiring moments.